VAR is not the answer. At least that's what Wolverhampton Wanderers brass and a few other clubs would like you to believe as they lead the league to a potentially historic vote to eliminate the flawed technology. And while it's unlikely to pass, the fact that it's even being voted upon is an indictment to VAR's very existence. Look, VAR is obviously flawed, but the solution to fixing it is really not all that complicated. VAR was put in place to eliminate human errors. The best way to eliminate human errors is with more humans. We're going to talk about why that is next, here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. While you'll find me defending replay in theory, you won't find me defending VAR in its current form, which is flawed in both mechanics and implementation. But there are a few simple solutions that we're going to talk about today that can fix this problem and keep VAR in the game. But before we do that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get down in that comment section. Would you like to see VAR eliminated altogether, or kept around and fixed, or kept as is? Get in that comment section. Let me know what you think below. You can also leave some comments on our Twitter feed at Pitchside Pub. And of course, check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. So it was yet another season full of officiating controversies, the exact kind of controversies that VAR is supposed to eliminate, but in fact makes worse. There are two key problems to the current officiating structure as it stands in European football right now, and the solutions are so simple, it's painful. The first problem are the instructions that officials are given on how to use VAR. The clear and obvious clause is the biggest obstacle that VAR faces because it sets the burden of proof far too high for officials to overturn a call. We all see a replay, fans, coaches, players, officials, and we all know what the call should be, but it doesn't mean the call on the field was clear and obviously wrong, and thus common sense is thrown out the window in favor of a strict interpretation of the rule as it's written. That's going to be an easy fix. The second problem is the amount of calls that go to VAR in the first place. VAR has become a necessary crutch for the official on the pitch, who's being asked to police a game filled with bigger, faster, stronger players than ever before. The game has never moved more quickly, and it is impossible for one man in the middle of the pitch to see everything. So we're going to give him some help, and we're going to explain how. Together, these two very simple changes should make VAR more effective and allow it to stay in the game. The first issue is the terminology within which VAR has to work. You would think the point of VAR is to get the calls right, but that's not true. Really, the point of VAR is only to fix the glaring mistakes. In fact, in initial discussions that FIFA had on the topic, it was overwhelmingly agreed that, quote, video assistance should only be used for clear errors in match-changing situations. So the goal was not actually to help the officials get all the calls right, it's to be a safety net for their most egregious errors. The problem is, we can't agree on what egregious is, or to use the terminology that the Premier League uses, clear and obvious. See, here's the problem, and this is the most common misconception among most fans. It's not that the foul, or in some cases non-foul, has to be clear and obvious. In fact, that has nothing to do with it. The clear and obvious corollary has to do with the call on the field. VAR is only supposed to overturn the call if there was a clear and obvious error on the field, not if it was in fact a clear and obvious foul. So the intention is not to get the call right, it's to protect the officials in their worst moments, which, unfortunately, creates even more of them. Instead of, quote, VAR can be used to overturn a subjective decision if a clear and obvious error has been identified, as is written on the Premier League's own website, we could simply change it to, quote, VAR can be used to review and overturn a subjective decision in any case where replay shows a different decision should have been made. That's it. The VAR looks at the call, gets on the headset, calls the official over and says, hey, let's get this right. They're looking at it, but from a different perspective. It's not, do you think you made a clear and obvious error? It's, did we get this call correct? Because that's the justification we now get for what seems otherwise inexplicable. Every weekend we wait for a VAR review to be completed, and we think we know the outcome, only to be left dumbfounded when the decision goes the other way. And more often than not, the only explanation is, well, I guess he didn't think the error was obvious. This eliminates that problem. Empower the officials to make the calls they want to make. Give them the opportunity to get this right. Protecting officials is good, but we have to empower them to do it properly. By opening up the language of the VAR, we are potentially opening up to the possibility of more VAR reviews, which would be bad for the game. One of the most accurate complaints about VAR is the amount of time it takes and the delays it causes to the rhythm of the game. Almost every goal and most cards receive some form of review because it's so difficult for the official to be sure he saw everything correctly. But rather than having to go to VAR for more calls, what if we just got more calls right on the pitch? Now that's easier said than done when there's one poor official out there trying to police the entire pitch on his own, but why is he out there by himself anyway? Sure, he has his sideline officials holding their flags, but let's face it, the main official out on the pitch holds the lion's share of the responsibility and does the majority of the running. The sideline official really just watches for out of bounds and offsides and occasionally chimes in on the headset for a foul that took place right in front of them. But the main official needs more help. The game is faster than ever, players are bigger and stronger, and we're asking one person to police one of the biggest playing areas in all of sports, and then we get mad when he can't see everything. Are we starting to see the problem here? Maybe it's us. The NBA has set a great example of how to operate with multiple officials on the court at once, and that's a much smaller area to cover. The triumvirate operate in a rotation, with each official responsible for a certain area of the floor depending on where they are. There is one crew chief, but all three operate together as a unit, each with an ability to make all of the possible calls. European football could easily take a page out of this playbook to help their causes, and there are a couple different ways this could be done. The first way would be to bring sideline officials out onto the pitch and give them more authority. Ditch the flags and give them a whistle. Let them call fouls, award cards, and do everything else their crew chief already does. We would have to replace their previous duties, monitoring out-of-bounds lines and policing offsides, with technological advancements, but we've already seen those capabilities work. We have goal line technology and that works great. Extend it to the entire perimeter of the pitch. It works in tennis, there's no reason it can't work in football. We've also started to see some automated offsides technologies implemented in other places. This could replace the sideline officials, or perhaps they would still need to be done by humans, meaning those officials are still responsible for positioning themselves for those calls while also being allowed to make additional calls as well. The advancement of technology will dictate how this option plays out, but we aren't too far away from offsides no longer being a manual task, thus freeing up the sideline officials to join the officiating party out on the pitch. The second option might be a little simpler. We leave the sideline officials where they are, but we add a second official out on the pitch to police the game with the primary official. Each official mans his or her own half of the pitch on an alternate side from the other, giving them more angles to see fouls and less physical demand on the amount of ground covered. Not a lot else changes, but having a second person means better sight angles, fewer obstructions from the players blocking the ability to make the call, and fewer instances where an official doesn't see a minuscule piece of contact because they're running at full speed down the pitch. The current state of officiating can be summed up with two problems. One official out on a giant pitch trying to police some of the world's best athletes while running back and forth at full speed. And a replay system there to back him up, but only really to catch his most egregious mistakes, thus creating even more controversy than it's set out to prevent. I've provided two solutions here, but I would love to get your input. Do you like these solutions? Is more needed? Should it be left the way it is? Get down in that comment section, let me know what you think. You can also leave comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. While you're here, hit that subscribe button for me down below, and be sure to check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.